Welcome to People Who Perform, the Real Estate Careers podcast. Each episode will bring you conversations from business leaders and up-and-coming stars in the commercial real estate industry in Canada. Our guests will share their unique career journeys, passions, and advice on what it takes to be successful in this industry. This podcast is brought to you by Highview Partners, connecting people who perform in Canadian real estate.
I'm your host, Nicola Denning-Millar, and today I'm pleased to introduce Chris King. Chris is going to share with us how he's navigated his way through one of our industry's most vital service providers and share some of the lessons that he's learned along the way. Chris is a graduate of the University of Guelph and holds a bachelor's degree in commerce, majoring in human resources management. For the past 11 years, he's been working with Hallmark Housekeeping, a national janitorial service provider. Chris joined Hallmark early on in his career as their HR manager and currently serves as the Regional Vice President of the Greater Toronto Area. He and his team service approximately 90 million square feet of commercial space across the GTA. Hallmark are proud recipients of the BOMA Pinnacle Award in the category of Above and Beyond. This award recognises role model companies that demonstrate standards of excellence to which others should aspire to. So welcome to our Real Estate Careers podcast, Chris.
Thank you for having me, Nicola.
I really appreciate you carving out some time to speak with me today, because I know that you and your teams are working around the clock during this crazy pandemic. What sort of challenges are you facing right now, and how on earth are you overcoming them?
Well, broadly speaking, I would say our greatest challenge is that everything we're doing right now is unfamiliar. We are waking up every day having to make these tremendously difficult decisions that could affect the health, safety, and livelihood of others. And in many cases, there really isn't an expert that you can consult or resources that you can use to navigate each situation. In terms of overcoming this challenge, we're just doing our best to keep level heads and use our experience along with common sense to try to make the best possible decisions. We're also staying in tune with the ever-changing social norms, public opinion, and messaging from the government and other health authorities. But, we said since the beginning of this pandemic that our absolute priority needs to be the health and well-being of Hallmark's people, and that every decision we make needs to be centered around that guiding principle. And that's exactly how we've operated thus far. And honestly, by and large, this has led to favorable outcomes for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard enough making key decisions in a normal climate, but doing it when the outcome can't be accurately predicted, I mean, it just makes everything that much more complicated, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And how are you keeping your staff motivated right now? Because it must be very, very, very difficult for all of you.
Well, we've ensured that there's no shortage of appreciation and praise for everyone's efforts right now. Appreciation and recognition is something that is routinely practiced and communicated throughout our organization. But now it's a matter of doing this from a distance through things like social media posts and site communications. Unfortunately, this is not a great time to have staff parties, socials, and other recognition events, as you can imagine. But this will all happen once the pandemic is over. But along these lines, I have to say that we're so fortunate to have such a great team. Hallmark, as many know, is a family business, and everyone on our team is treated as family. This is something that has been ingrained in our culture by our owner, Manny Clementino, and his sons, Philip and David. And honestly, that being said, we haven't even had to ask our team to step up during this pandemic. They just did it, and with an unbridled determination and commitment. And I'm not sure all organizations would be able to say this.
Well, before we get into this, Chris, on behalf of the Highview team, I want to thank you and your teams and everyone in our industry right now who's working on the front line. There really are so many unsung heroes out there who I think we're now realising that we just simply can't live without. I'm just so full of gratitude for all of our frontline staff. So thank you so much. So if we can begin, please, Chris, with you sharing the start of your journey and how you've reached VP level so far in your career.
Well, I very randomly entered the janitorial industry, as I think many people do. The funny thing is this seems to be a trend across the entire commercial real estate industry. I feel like every person I talk to, whether they're in property management, leasing, or, even among the service vendors and contractors, it seems everybody entered the business in a very serendipitous manner. which I still am not sure why that is. Anyway, so here's how I randomly found myself in the industry. And now to preface this, prior to joining Hallmark, I was working for a reforestation company. So this is a summer job that I had my last year of university, before my last year of university, that led to an opportunity when I graduated. So we were one of those companies that employed the teenagers and 20-somethings that would go up north or out west to plant trees. Probably most of us know somebody who did this. I remember having some friends or cousins that would go up and do this. It's very challenging and physically demanding work. Not something for me. So my role with them was basic entry-level HR work, mainly payroll, which was actually quite interesting because tree planters are paid on piecework. They would get a predetermined amount for every sapling that was planted. And then it was my job to take all the planting info and convert that into someone's paycheck. Wow, so this was a great start to my career because I had just graduated with a BCom in Human Resources Management. And, I was already getting some meaningful experience in my field, which is like all you can hope for. But as you can imagine, reforestation is a very seasonal business, and we're not planting trees in the snow. So when January rolled around, I was told I would be laid off until the spring when there would be something to do again. Now, of course, being fresh out of university, brimming with confidence, ready to take on the world and make six figures as we all are. I really didn't like the idea of sitting at home for 3 months. So I posted my resume on all the major job boards. I called some recruiters, much like you, Nicola, hit all the job fairs.
I'm sure it wasn't quite as good an experience. But,
no, of course not. Not even close. And even I pounded the pavement going door to door to drop off my resume. But I wasn't getting any bites, and it was demoralizing. On top of that, I was living at home, and, I love my parents, but you don't want to be living with your parents at that time, right? Again, brimming with confidence, ready to take on the world. And I just felt like my life was at a standstill. I had all the ambition in the world and just assumed I would fall into a great job and make lots of money. Despite this being a pretty terrible time for me, it ended up being one of the most formative and pivotal points in my life and career. And I think a lot of young folks fresh out of post-secondary education will have the same experience. Now, just going back to when I was saying I wasn't getting any bites from employers, it wasn't entirely true. The multi-level marketing companies were all over me. I'm sure a lot of new grads have experienced the same. And it's not to say that they're all bad, but with most of them, you're an independent contractor working entirely on commission. And some of them are definitely borderline pyramid schemes. But boy, did they have some convincing pitches for those who are hungry for opportunity. So one of these companies had wooed me into signing up. I won't name them, but the role was to cold call business owners and try to sell them something that seemingly none of them wanted. Was
it the chocolate teapot company?
Not quite that. No, it wasn't the knives door-to-door company either. It was a different one. It was one that was a little more sophisticated, but kind of a similar premise. So anyways, I did 2 days of training, which were exciting. They get you, very excited, and it was full of promise and optimism. But on my first day on the phones, I quickly realized that this was not the job or organization for me. I mean, there was no employee culture, there were no mentors, and the environment was hostile at best. So quick funny story about my first day. The deal breaker for me was when I went into the staff kitchen on my break to get a coffee, and I'm not kidding you when I say this, there was a sign on their dated, decrepit coffee machine that said coffee 50 cents. I'm not even kidding. I was like, oh my God, yeah, this is not going to work. So and this is not like me, but I quit at the end of the day. I knew I was like, this is not for me. I've made a mistake. And as I said before, this was a pivotal and formative time. And I learned that was not for me. I needed somewhere that had good culture, that had a good environment where I felt inspired and motivated, and that had good people working around me.
And free coffee.
And free coffee. Yeah. Right. Like that should be a given. Anyway. So anyways, this was definitely the lowest point in my career. And I remember going home that day, almost in tears as like a 21-year-old, just so disappointed in myself and dreading having the conversation with my parents. I had hyped this job up so much and it was a total letdown. Anyway, the funny thing is my parents were great and they thought the job was a scam from the beginning. God bless for allowing me to see it for myself. They've always been good about that. And they reassured me that the right job was around the corner, and they were right. Turns out my job seeking efforts had paid off. And about a week later, I got a call from a recruiter who found my resume online and was looking for candidates for a role in human resources for a large commercial cleaning firm, which was Hallmark. I knew nothing about Hallmark or the cleaning industry at the time. It was never mentioned in my university textbooks, nor did I know anyone in the business, but the company itself just seemed so fantastic right from the beginning. It was the people, it was just reading about them. It was, the interview was just awesome. Like I loved it. And it was a family-owned business. The role seemed exciting and very dynamic, and honestly, it just seemed like the perfect opportunity for me. So, fortunately, they picked me, and I've never looked back. It's been 11 years now. So, in terms of my progression at Hallmark and in the cleaning industry, I spent just under 5 years as Hallmark's human resources manager. At which time, and it was, it all feels surreal now, but I was offered a promotion to not only move over to operations, but into a director role. This was actually the idea of Hallmark's owner, Manny Clementino. So, how could I possibly refuse such a vote of confidence from the company's owner? You gotta take that opportunity. But you have to understand at this time, I was the HR guy with no operations experience. But Manny believed in me, and I knew he's a visionary guy, and he realized that operations in cleaning is all about labor and people. So why couldn't the HR guy take on this role? I think a lot of people in the organization at the time thought it was a strange move. Might not have even been very happy about it, but knowing I had the owner in my corner gave me confidence. So.
Well, it's also really nice, isn't it, and flattering when there's someone there that can see something in you that you maybe just didn't, see yourself.
Yeah, that's such a great way of putting it. I never even thought that was a possible avenue for me. Like I never thought that I could go anywhere else other than move upward in HR. So it was just, it was a really scary but also exciting time. So I'm jumping into a role now that I don't quite understand and was required to lead a team of very experienced industry veterans, like great guys and incredibly good at their jobs, guys and girls, some with decades of experience. And as I mentioned, this was terrifying. I felt very insecure, but I told myself, you've been given this opportunity because you have something to offer. So I remember in one of my very first meetings with my new team, I decided that I was just going to level with them. And I told them straight that I wanted to learn from them. And I was honest that I didn't know the job, but that with their help and support, I would learn it. And eventually I would do it very well. And I told them that at the same time, I would be able to support them with other things that I was good at, like communication, organization, problem solving, employee engagement, so on. I told them I would use my HR knowledge and experience to help them draw the best out of their staff, which I think is really the most important thing in a labor business.
I think it is. You're also showing a little vulnerability there. And I think, any successful team, if you can draw off of your own sort of strengths and weaknesses, you can actually really fortify a team.
Yeah, I love that you said that because I've always been a proponent of not being afraid to be vulnerable, in your life, in your career. To me, I find it to be a very endearing quality. And to me, that signifies good character from someone as well too, if they're not afraid to be vulnerable. So, from that day on, I kid you not, we worked so well together. Me and my new team, they took me under their wing, even though I was technically the boss, and we all learned together. And I think we did a lot of great things. And I think
sorry, I was going to say it's a real show of confidence in you as well, isn't it?
Yeah, no, 100%. I was just so happy the way that they received me, and I just always had the greatest respect for all of them, since the beginning. And I think back on this and I could have gone in with guns blazing and acted like I knew everything and that I was going to be the next big thing, just hot shot. And I know that if I took that approach, I wouldn't have survived in that role. There's no chance. Anyhow, since then, I moved up to the regional VP role. And as you mentioned in my bio, I currently oversee the Greater Toronto Area, which consists of about 90 million square feet of predominantly commercial space and approximately 3,000 staff. I'm fortunate to have a wonderful team, lots of support from my bosses and from the Clementino family. And honestly, I love the organization. Things have been great. They say millennials are job hoppers and only spend an average of 2 years in any given job, but I've honestly had no reason to want to do anything else.
That's amazing, Chris. So in terms of being a great leader, I remember actually just before our first meeting, I remember looking up your LinkedIn profile and was really impressed with, just sort of how quickly you'd worked your way up into senior management. But it wasn't until sort of during our meeting that it became quite obvious to me as to why that was. And in you, I saw a combination of some really great qualities, your passion for a start, humility, confidence, great energy, and a very sort of natural ability to connect with other people. What qualities do you feel, in addition to those ones that I've said, that make a great leader?
Well, first off, that's high praise. I think you're giving me more credit than I deserve, but thank you for the kind words.
First impressions are important.
Yeah, no, thank you. When I talk about what I think it takes to be a great leader, for the record, I'm answering this. I should say, when I answer this, I'm not implying that I've reached great leader status. I know that I haven't. I'm still learning every day on how I can be a more effective leader, but I'll answer this based on what I've learned so far in my life and career, and from being fascinated by human relations and just leadership in general. So I think that the greatest leaders I've known of all possess one very important quality, and that's empathy. I think most of us can agree that a leader's main role is to draw the best out of their people. And I think that in order to do this, you need to truly understand each and every person that you lead. Otherwise, how will you know what it takes for them to be their best? What motivates them? What gets them out of bed in the morning? What makes them want to go the extra mile for the customer? What will make them strive to take care of their employees like they would their own family? I think empathetic leaders understand that management leadership is not a one-size-fits-all approach, and that you need to understand your audience right down to what makes each and every person tick. I also think that an empathetic leader also takes the time to learn about their people, and this is because they're also great listeners. As much as we see leaders delivering these passionate and inspiring speeches, I truly believe that a great leader spends most of their time listening. How else do you know what's going on in your organization and in your industry? How else are you going to truly understand your team, your market, your customers? I think the point about the importance of listening is particularly relevant for those leaders who aren't naturally empathetic. I mean, not everyone is wired this way. Not everyone has empathy, flowing through their veins.
You can't teach somebody to have empathy, can you?
Probably not at the core, but I'll offer a hot take here and say that I think you can learn to be more empathetic simply by being a good listener or taking the time to learn how to be a good listener. I think that you can develop qualities of an empathetic person. And I don't mean that to sound like you need to be disingenuous in order to be empathetic if you're not naturally. It's completely genuine as long as it's sincere, as long as you actually care about listening to that person and you understand the importance of listening to that person.
Are you ready to find the best next hire to join your real estate business? Highview is committed to finding the best talent to fit your hiring needs. Our teams specialize in recruiting at all levels, from coordinators, analysts, and operators to managers, directors, and vice presidents. Contact us today or visit us at highviewpartners.ca/employers.
So I'm going to switch gears a little bit here. You've always talked quite excitedly, Chris, about new technologies. So my question is, how have advancements in technology changed the way you go about your work?
I would say the advancements in technology and cleaning innovation is probably what excites me most about my job. And it's actually become a big part of my job, which is great. I mean, this is where I can really nerd out on the fun things in cleaning, like robotics and sensor technology and, new ways to sanitize and disinfect and new machines and so on and so forth. So I love it from the passionate side. But from the more practical side, when you say, how has it changed the way I go about my work? Well, it's changed the way we clean. it's changed everything about our business. Really, it's created different productivity metrics and different staffing models, and it requires different training and skill sets. And most importantly, I think it's crucial to recognize that innovation and technology is the way of the future. And we need to ensure we are constantly staying on the leading edge of everything new and exciting, and that we're constantly readapting so that we aren't left behind. In 5 to 10 years, cleaning is going to look much different than it does today. We want to make sure that we're one of those companies that, is a first mover, and that is ready and willing to change and is adapting, with new technology and all the great things that it could bring.
So do you think that service robots are eventually going to replace people?
It'll be a long time. But, robotics will be a very big thing in the next, I would say, again, 5 to 10 years. There's still a lot of limitations. They're not at the point where they're able to replace humans. But that being said, they're, developing at an exponential rate. And every year they're getting more and more sophisticated. They can do more and more. There's floor cleaning robots now that can fill themselves up and empty themselves and charge themselves. And, so I have no doubt they'll eventually figure out a way for them to dust and for them to, wipe down surfaces. And, they already have some that can vacuum, which is pretty neat. But I think at the point right now where, there's still a ways to go in terms of their functionality. They're great to have in the buildings. I mean, they're so intriguing to look at, when you watch them going through the lobbies, but like I said, I think they're still, quite a ways away of actually replacing people.
So you've never caught yourself walking past and saying hello?
Well, actually, some of the robots we have actually have names, so sometimes we'll call them by name. But it's so funny to see if you go to one of our buildings that has a robot in them, you'll often see a little gallery forming around them. You'll see people taking pictures. You even see sometimes people lying down in front of them, trying to see if they'll stop. But yeah, it's quite the spectacle. People are fascinated by them. Just this machine is just operating independently and autonomously, and it's cleaning the floor. It's very neat to see. So I do think that eventually they will be in every building. But I think we're many, many, many years away from them fully replacing a cleaning staff. So
I took my kids actually to the Eaton Centre last year, and we were part of that gallery. And my kids were like, just thought it's some kind of transformer. Like, what does it do? What's going on? Yeah.
Well, they have the lights and they make the sounds and they're and they're very intuitive. Like I said, every year they're developing more and more sophisticated robots. It's very exciting. It's going to be very exciting to see what happens in the next few years.
Absolutely. Sure. It's going to be like being in an episode of Doctor Who.
Oh, I know. Yeah, exactly.
So I'd like to talk now a little bit more about professional learning and development. What have you done to invest in yourself and continue to grow over the years?
Funny that you ask this. And this is something that I don't have probably the greatest answer to, because it's actually on my list for 2020. I actually just joined a peer networking group, which offers professional training and coaching. It's essentially regular meetings with others who have similar roles to mine, where we can share ideas, problem solve, and, generally support each other. But I've definitely not done enough of this in the past, despite knowing how valuable it is. There's definitely some, great mentors in my life. People that I go to, for support and for ideas and things like that. But I definitely will be upping my game in 2020 as far as, coaching and professional development goes. I should also mention, though, that in the past, mostly in my 20s, I became a little bit obsessed with self-help books, which sounds funny, particularly on the topics of management and leadership. Just as an example, my favorite is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I don't know if you've read the book. You've probably heard of it.
I have.
But I have a copy beside my bed and I read it. I've read it numerous times. I think it was written in like the 1930s, yet all of the principles still hold true today, which is just so fascinating. I mean, it's one of those timeless books. I seriously recommend it to anyone, not only for their careers, but just for life in general. It really teaches you how to get the most out of every interaction you have. So I did a lot of my own sort of independent, learning and development. But like I said, I need to up my game this year and going forward for sure.
Well, I think you're forgiven, Chris, because you're probably working 14, 16-hour days at the moment. So it's a case of finding the time, isn't it?
Maybe during COVID, yeah, it's not
Yeah.
it's not so bad in the regular times, but during COVID, definitely it's been there's been some long days, but.
So knowing what you know now, what piece of life advice do you think you'd give your younger self?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a lot of things there. If I could talk to young Chris right now, there's probably a few investments I would tell him to make for sure. Uh,
Hindsight is a wonderful thing, right?
yeah, that's right, exactly. I mean, I would say most of all, don't sweat the small stuff so much because, seriously, things are going to go wrong in your life, whether you like it or not, and sometimes really wrong. So save your energy to care for yourself and others when it really matters. And I would tell younger Chris to stretch a little bit more. I feel like my body hurts a lot more than it used to after doing very physically innocuous activities. So maybe stretch some more too.
Well, you are in your grand old late 30s now, aren't you?
Actually, early 30s. I'm only
Sorry.
33, so yeah.
It's the beard that throws me off.
It's okay. I forgive you, Nicola.
So you sort of talked a little bit earlier on about a willingness to be vulnerable. I'm just going to ask you now, what's been your darkest hour? And what did you learn, Chris?
Well, I think no doubt for me, my darkest hour is a personal thing, but it happened fairly recently. So in 2018, my wife was diagnosed with cancer. I should quickly say she's doing very well now and in remission. So that's great. But this was by far the greatest challenge I've endured. I've been fortunate to have a really great life. So this just really turned everything upside down. I was basically a year of going in and out of the hospital with surgery, radiation, appointments, follow-ups. It was rough, and you wish it was you, as I think most partners and family members do. Now, one silver lining is that we celebrated her remission in Italy, which was lovely.
Wow.
So that was great. But definitely there was a lot that I learned. This sounds so cliche, but it really does put things into perspective and just made me appreciate her so much more and appreciate my family and friends so much more and appreciate the little things in life so much more. It was just such a real reminder to stop sweating the small stuff. It's like what I just said about, what I would tell younger Chris. And I actually noticed a significant reduction of daily stress after that year because the little things just stopped bothering me. So yeah, by far it was that for sure.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm very happy to hear that she's in remission.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
So when you're away from the business, how do you typically like to enjoy life out of work?
Well, I play in a band. We're called Blind Sages. I'm going to throw out a cheap plug. You can actually find us on Spotify and Apple Music and any of the major streaming platforms. I play keys in the band, but I also play guitar and a few other instruments. So music's a huge part of my life. It always has been. Actually, growing up, it was kind of music or business. I sort of hit a crossroads, and I remember it's my music teacher that told me this joke, but they said, what's the difference between a musician and a pizza? I said, what? He said, a pizza can feed a family of 4. And, it was around that time that I thought maybe business is the better option. I don't think I was too exceptional with music, so it's probably the right direction. But it's always been a huge part of my life. I also love to golf, which is like very fitting in our industry. There's a lot of opportunities to golf and commercial real estate, and, through BOMA and the other organizations. So I like to get out at least weekly in the summertime, which is great, and love to go with my wife and go to new restaurants and eat and drink, and that's definitely a big part of our life as well. So.
Sounds fantastic. So before we finish up here, Chris, I'd like to leave our listeners with just a couple more takeaways. So for those considering a career within the janitorial services industry, what would you want them to know?
I love this question because, I would love to see more younger people getting into the janitorial business. I would love to see people coming out of school, or just people looking for opportunity, in their early 20s, getting involved in cleaning. The janitorial industry is not what you think it is. It may not appear glamorous, but I can assure you it is badass. There is so much freedom, flexibility. You get to do things early on in your career that it may take years to do in other careers. And if you're ambitious, there's just so much opportunity. We also get to do a little entertaining here and there, which is not the worst as well.
A little.
Yeah. But, seriously, it's a very exciting industry. It's very fast paced, and every single day is different. If you want a job and a career where you're going to wake up every day with something new, a new challenge, meeting new people, going to a new building. This is just such a fantastic line of work, fantastic career, fantastic industry. Challenging, no doubt, but also incredibly rewarding.
And, if you're performing well, fairly secure and pretty recession proof.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's, as we learned, it's an essential service. So, even in tough economic times, we're still out there, our armies are still out there cleaning. And so it's not a bad thing that it can survive the ups and downs, for sure.
I love your way of describing it there, an army. Like, it really is a collaborative team spirit that rises up in the face of adversity.
Absolutely it is. Yeah, 100%.
For someone who's looking to raise their game within the industry, what would be your advice at this stage?
And also kind of answer this question also through the lens of this being for somebody young in the industry. Be curious. And by that, I mean, be ready and willing to learn about all aspects of the industry and get excited about new ideas and challenges. Take interest and learn from others who know and have helped shape the industry, and success is going to follow. And, maybe even more importantly, be honest and kind. It sounds simple, but believe me, the commercial real estate industry is incredibly tightly knit, and not one where you want to burn your bridges. So being a good person, fostering strong relationships and building trust will take you places, for sure.
Absolutely. I agree with you, Chris. Thank you so much for your time today. It was really insightful on several different levels, and you are always 10 tons of fun to chat with, Chris.
Oh, thank you very much. And likewise. And I really appreciate you thinking of me and having me on.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to People Who Perform, the Real Estate Careers podcast brought to you by Highview Partners, a talent search and recruitment firm focused exclusively on Canadian real estate. If your real estate team is looking to find the best next hire, or if you're ready to make the best next move in your career, then reach out to Highview Partners today. Follow us on LinkedIn and visit us at highviewpartners.ca.